Take it away.
Hello and welcome to another weekly Hearthstone call. We do this every week. We've been doing this for over a year. This is so powerful. And today is honestly, personally, a very special one. Today is a year since my father passed away. And, a lot of this work that we do in Young Kings University, a lot of this work that we do with men overall was inspired by, seeing my dad and also seeing how he never had access to things like this, like a space where men could be men, a space where men could, share vulnerably, share openly, have a space for us to celebrate each other, give each other flowers, give each other some advice even or some wisdom. Sometimes even a good challenge to help. So I appreciate all you guys for being on today. You guys know I'm really excited and honestly, in honor of my dad, I'm celebrating with a little Dominican rum here. It's his favorite. So, we're honoring him here and we're going to be talking about something that's really fun. Last week we talked about dating, we talked about sex life and everything like that, which is, we literally ran out of time. Everybody was cooking, everybody was having a great time. And today I want to get a little bit deeper with y'all. I really want to talk about death. I want to talk about grieving. I want to talk about, man expressing your feelings and also how we can navigate that as men. Because personally, I've never experienced death from a close one, to be honest, a close person that I love. And it caught me off guard. It was really challenging, but it's also taught me so much about life. It's taught me so much about, being a man, and it's taught me so much about continuing to show up even when, your feelings might be heavy. So that's what we're talking about today. Get settled in. It should be a fun one. And as we dive in, I'm curious. Let's dive right in. You guys know I don't like to go around the beat around the bush. How do you guys navigate grief and losing somebody in your life? Like what are some of your favorite ways to navigate losing someone that you love, someone that you care about? I know we're diving right in, but trust me, like we just run out of time every time with these calls on Thursday, so I want to make sure that we have as much time as possible to hear from as many of you guys as possible. And I'll start it off because it's important. So one of the best ways that I like to navigate, death and grieving and losing someone that I care about personally is by doing what a lot of men don't do, is sitting with my feelings and my thoughts. Yes, I am indeed having a little bit of rum today to celebrate my dad's passing, but I think one of the best ways to navigate grief is by sitting with it sober, by actually really sitting with it and feeling it. And I found that, especially during the first 2 weeks when my dad first passed away, I really was intentional about sitting with it, really feeling it all, like really thinking about all the feelings that were coming up. And it was really hard because when he passed away, I came to the Dominican Republic to bring his remains. And there's a lot of temptation here to just go out and drink. All my friends from childhood were here and they wanted to go and do things. And I said no. I wanted to be very intentional. I didn't want to um, numb myself out. I didn't want to push stuff off because I know that the more that I did that, the bigger it would become. And I allowed myself to sit with it. I sat with it in the airplane when, and just really allow myself to feel all the feelings. And it really helped me to have the strength and the capacity to support my friends, to support my family, to support the people who also lost them. It wasn't just me that lost them. So that's been one of my favorite ways to do it. And it's allowed me to, create space for those feelings. Like this week, I've taken it pretty slow because, it's been a heavy week. So I made sure that I space out my schedule and my calendar so that I have time to feel the feelings if they come up. And it's been really helpful. It's allowed me to feel honestly pretty great today and in a celebratory mood. Like I really want to celebrate his life. And um, yeah, so that's been my approach, and it's been massively helpful, especially seeing a lot of men who shy away from that, and they rather distract themselves with alcohol, sex, drugs, all those things, and all those are options, but they can also be distractions. Alex, I see your hand up. Go ahead, my brother.
First and foremost, thanks for showing up on the anniversary of your pop's passing. I think you'd be proud. I think as men, it's helpful to be in action with these things and not get stuck in them. Um, as for me, when I've lost people in my life, the first thing that always shows up for me is I want to be a space for people around them that might be really suffering and struggling. That's my natural tendency. And letting people really like hold space for people, including myself. And what I also like to do, um, I don't like to brush over things. I want people to have their experience, but I like to celebrate people. And I want to remember them for what they taught me. So I always say whenever someone passes close to me, I attempt to do my best to walk in a way that they'd appreciate something I learned from them. One of my great aunts who passed away, as an example, she was really spunky and always spoke her mind and always had very interesting conversations with people. So I do my best to do that still. Um, I also noticed too that for me, grief a lot of the times, how it shows up is it shows up as anger. It's like anger masked. It's helping me like not feel the grief. So for me, I like you, I like to sit with these things little by little, not too much, because then I have a tendency to get lost in things if I do it for too long. So I I really kind of make note of where my mindset is and if my grief is showing up as different emotions, because it often doesn't show itself to my face like directly, until I get to the heart and bolt, like the heart and soul of it. So those are some of the initial things that show up for me.
Well, that's really powerful. And we already you kings already cooking. Okay, Luke, I see your hands up first. Go ahead, brother.
Um, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, First off, what you mentioned, well, even before that, Carlos, thank you for showing up on the anniversary of your dad's passing. That's tough, especially when it's like a father or a mother. Um, I'll touch on my dad in a bit. But I wanted to just talk about Alex, when you said with grief, a lot of times it shows up as anger. To me, um, anger and frustration, they typically go hand in hand with injustice very often. And we might be really frustrated that somebody's taken from us before we were able to, either have the time that we wanted or have the conversations, and they're not going to be there going forward. So it does feel like an injustice in that way. Um, I lost my dad to cancer in 2020, and it was April 2020. So it was the heart of the lockdown. It wasn't due to COVID. It was cancer. It was head and neck. And we Indians, I'm 100% Indian. That tends to be one of the highest incidence of cancer in our, uh, I guess, ethnicity or whatever. Um, and it was tough. It, I remember I'd be driving, just getting from one place to another, and I just break down in tears. It's like my kids to this day still don't think I've ever cried, even though it's not true. Like my boys are like, Dad never cries. Mom, why do you cry? Like, Dad doesn't cry. Should I be crying? I'm like, dude, you guys just haven't seen or you don't remember. um, but I've got two boys, 5 and 10. Um, and it makes you realize how fragile life is. Um, I'm thinking back to losing my grandparents as well. It's, there's very few occasions where you get together with extended family. That we've got birth, we've got marriage, and then we got death. And some of these people you won't see unless it's one of those occasions because you're spread all over the map. One of the things that was kind of I guess something to be thankful for, even though I wouldn't normally think of it that way, um, is since it was during a lockdown and during COVID, only 10 people could attend in person for the funeral. Um, and but that allowed, because one of my sisters, people weren't flying then, and she's a physician, and she saw COVID patients on a regular basis. So there's no way she was getting on a plane and getting um, coming over here to Chicago. So we had to create a path for people to be able to speak at the funeral when they weren't there. So then we did do Zoom, and then it let people in other countries actually speak as well, which was kind of cool because that would have never happened otherwise. It just isn't something to think of. So that was kind of neat. Yeah, giving a eulogy is it's whew, it'll it'll wear on you. Um, but yeah, that's kind of what I got to share right now. So, Drew.
Brother, thank you for being open, honest, and vulnerable. My heart goes out to you, and yeah, eulogies are definitely tough. And Drew, I see your hand and stuff. Go ahead, my brother.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you guys for sharing about your, personal experiences. I know, that stuff can be really rough. And yeah, kind of to piggyback on what Carlos was saying, it's the only way to deal with grief is to kind of sit with it and push through it. I've had my own personal grief, whether it's, friends dying or family dying, and I've dealt with it in a variety of different ways, whether that's numbing it with, weed and alcohol, or, in more healthy fashion, and just sitting with it. And really, there's no way around it. You have to just sit with it and feel that and allow it to pass at its own pace. Because if you try to sidestep it in any way, it's going to come back to bite you. If you don't deal with those things in the moment as they come up, they're not going to go away. They're going to show up at some point. So the only way to deal with them is to just allow them to show up, recognize they're there, and make space for that to allow it to have its moment. I haven't lost a parent yet. You got to talk about losing your dads, and I've thought about that in the past, and like, holy cow, that's going to be a hard one, but it's going to come one day. And we all have our lifespan, and we don't know when the end is. So it's just kind of a fate that we'll all face. Um, but yeah, grief's a tough one, but you got to make space for it and just feel it and know that you'll get through it. And eventually, with time, it'll uh, run its course. But you gotta make space for that.
You guys are so fucking awesome. So I appreciate you guys, and I want to touch on a couple of things. First of all, Alex, when you touched on how grief shows up with anger, and I can definitely relate with that. I remember when I first lost my dad, being an only child, and um, I was really angry. I'm like, I got to do all these things. I have to, take responsibility for this, and I didn't have to. As the son, I chose to, and I remember I was definitely angry. I was definitely upset. I felt like, at least at the time, that I wanted more time with him, and God had different plans, and I was angry. I was upset. Definitely showed up for me, and I know that to touch on what Luke shared, one of the places where I first I like actually let out some of that anger because I was too busy setting up two funeral services in the United States, and then another one in Dominican Republic. I didn't really have much time to really feel that first day, at least like the first 2 days was rough. And one of the things that allowed me to first express it was, sharing the eulogy with my dad. I never wrote a eulogy. I wasn't planning on it. I wasn't planning on sharing it, but I'm his only son. So, there was a bunch of people that shared, and then it came, the ball was on my court. Like everyone was like, "Hey, you gotta say something." And I remember how upset I was. I was really angry because I'm a mental health professional. Like I have a master's in behavior analysis and all that stuff, and psychology and all those things. And the person that mattered the most, I wasn't able to help. He didn't allow me to help. Like I sat with him for hours, sat with his insurance for hours, tried to help get him some support, and he just wasn't. receptive to it. And I was really angry. I was really upset because I've seen so many men do the same thing. And for me, especially in the eulogy I shared, like I'm a professional. I'm a teacher. I've been helping people for a long time, and one of the people that I care about the most, I wasn't able to help him. He basically died from depression, from not getting support, from not being vulnerable enough, from not asking for help, and not even that, like not even receiving help, because there was so many people that wanted to help him. Like there were so many people before he passed that, like, hey, like we're here for you, we love you, you're an amazing human. But he was just like, nah, I'm a man, figure this out on my own. I'll be good until his body gave out, till his body said no more. And that, was rough for me. Like it was really rough for me. I felt honestly, I felt worthless. I felt really useless. I'm like, I spent all this money, all this time getting, educated and being good at this stuff. And I've helped so many people overcome the depression, overcome the anxiety, do all these things. And one of the people that I care about the most, I felt like I wasn't able to. So that frustration definitely spewed out during that time. And luckily it was after the pandemic, so everyone was there. Like I was able to share with friends and family, and that was really awesome. And looking at me thinking, I was like, I'm grateful that I had that opportunity, even though it was painful. I didn't even think about that, like how difficult it would have been if it happened a couple years before. It would have been really challenging. So um, it really came back to what you were saying, Drew, where it's so important to create that space to feel these feelings. The only way through is through. Like you can't go around these feelings. You literally have to sit with them and experience what they're feeling. As much as it hurts, as much as it can be painful, and for a minute, I know it can be really difficult because what we don't understand sometimes is that when we don't do that, it spews out at the worst possible times. Like when we have a short fuse, we snap our kids, we snap our family or friends, and and that's in my opinion, a disservice to the people that we care for and people that we care about. So I love what you guys are sharing, and I'm grateful for you guys for being honest and real, because that's, in my opinion, the world needs more of it. And I personally would have loved for my dad to have some space like this where he can just share and be open about this stuff, because there's not enough of it in today's day and age. A lot of men are just like, go to work, go do your thing, and don't worry about it. And I think, in my opinion, that's why suicide rates and alcoholism is so high in men. And I'm glad that we have a space like this where we can share, openly, and not feel like we have to hold off or be judged or anything like that. So I appreciate y'all. And I see my brother Alice saying so. Go ahead, my brother.
So to kind of build off of what Drew was saying about sitting with it and not going around it, it kind of reminds me of my work that I do with people who have pains and discomforts, and how the saying that I like to say is that the body whispers before it screams. And the same thing goes for our emotions. And I notice that if I don't deal with something head on, and if I don't start to break it down bit by bit when it first happens, even if it's just one small step, I notice that it then becomes something that it's like different, like it evolves, and then it really confuses me in my head. And then I get really emotional and a lot really confused about things if I don't deal with things. Then it's like a lot bigger than it was. And then I kind of forget why I was grieving in the first place. Um, and it reminds me, I went whitewater rafting a few years ago, and I didn't hear what he was saying because I was so excited to get on the rapids. But I heard one, I remember one thing he said. He said, "This is the only thing that stood out." And I think it's a great metaphor for the point that I'm trying to convey. He said that when you get to the rapids, hit them head on. Hit them head on. Because if you hit them on the side, you might fall out of the boat and you might hit your head on the rock. You might get swept under. You might, like, all these things might happen. But if you hit it head on, you have a better chance of clearing it. And you also have a better chance of just landing it properly. Um, and because grief takes on whole new levels if you don't address it. And I really experienced that when with the passing of my half brother last year. And it was especially really difficult for me, not only that I lost him, but then like it got me to really see on the ground level what like my birth family, the dynamics were. And like that was almost, I was grieving almost even more from that than from my brother. It's just like, oh my God, there's just lack of communication, lack of organization, and like it really hurt my heart. But the silver linings was is it really reminded me of how grateful I was to be adopted by parents who could really take care of me. And so thankful that my birth mom made that choice. And also thankful that I was able to be there for them because I only met him a few years prior. So yeah, I like dealing with things head on, even if it's bit by bit. It makes it more digestible and not so doesn't feel like a big monster under the bed.
So honestly, it might be because I'm not that white, so I've never been whitewater rafting. But I do love that analogy, and I'm definitely going to steal it because I think it's such a beautiful image and it's such a beautiful visual and a great way to stay safe and do the right thing. So I love it, brother. I love it. Drew, go ahead, brother. I see your hands up.
Yeah, same thing. I love that analogy. Like if you're trying to fight the current, good luck. You know, you're just gonna get gassed. Like you'll have nothing in the tank. Um, but yeah. I mean, it's cool to see spaces like this developing because like as guys, we're not really taught how to communicate about these things or be with other guys when they're feeling something like that. Like I've seen so many women who have close friends and they're just very emotionally supportive of one another. And as guys, we don't grow up with that. It's kind of swallow your feelings, show up, crack some jokes and move on. We're expected to be much more stoic, or like Luke was saying, like my daughter's never seen me cry. It's like we're expected to be the stoic one. There's not really a space for that. And even when, if you do, most people don't know what to do with that because it's just uncommon. Men are supposed to kind of swallow their feelings and be strong, right? That's what they tell us, be strong. And there's definitely uh, uh, there's definitely a strength in that, but you got to go through, and there has to be a space to express yourself and feel that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, you did. That's such a good point, Drew. And, you got me thinking about this week. I know that on Monday, I woke up really heavy. It kind of like just dawned on me, like this is the week that will be a year since my dad passing. And on Monday, like I luckily I don't see any clients on Monday. Like my schedule is blacked out. I typically do some operational work and check emails, do all that stuff. So it's a little bit of a slower day. And I have my girlfriend over that day. And she was sharing some of the stuff she was going, and we're talking and talking. In the back of my head for like, I would say like 2 hours at least. I was like, should I tell her what I'm feeling and how I woke up and it's been just a heavy day and I've just been thinking about my dad's passing and thinking about him and all that. And I just like kept like, oh, it's good. But in the back of my mind, I also knew that if I started talking about it, I was probably gonna cry. And I was like, how do I feel about seeing me cry? And um, I eventually, and I say this openly, I got the balls to just share with her. I was like, hey, can I share something with you? Because I really do think it takes balls. One of the bravest thing a man can do is to open up, especially to a woman that we care about. So, like for me, it was really challenging. Like I was like playing with that idea for hours and hours. So when I got the balls and was brave enough to share with her and just let her know, like, hey, can I share something with you? That just those words from the heart, the hardest, one of the hardest things I've done. Um, and to see how receptive she was and how awesome she was with that, she's like, yeah, I'm here. What's up? It really allowed me to express myself. It really allowed me to feel what I was feeling. Um, it was really healing for me, and it also one of the things that sometimes as men we forget is that it strengthens your relationships with the women in your life. It does make the relationship stronger because you're trusting them with something that we don't trust anybody else with. Like we'd rather die. We'd literally rather die than open up. So it's such a gift. And I say this because I don't want to undermine how fucking scary it is. I I'm a mental health professional, and this happened to me this week. Like I've been studying psychology for almost a decade, and this is something that is still challenging for me. So I really want to say that because I think it's important for us to highlight how challenging it is. Like it's not something to breathe over. It's not something like oh shoot works, just say it. Like it's really difficult. Like it's really difficult, and for us, and I say this because I think it's also important for men to see what's possible, to see that one of the things that I'm most proud of is being a model and showing other men what's possible for us, like what we can actually do. And one of the things that we can do is be brave enough and be ballsy enough to share with people in our life that care for us how we're feeling, especially in those moments, instead of kind of bottling it up and not feeling what we need to feel. Especially when we have a support system that's, it's basically without asking us, like, hey, like, share it with me. And, this kind of brings me to my next point, which is distractions. I see a lot of men, they're experts at distracting themselves from feelings. They're experts at, whether it's, Netflix, video games, freaking social media scrolling, or one of I think the biggest ones that men don't even see as a distraction is work. Like we work to not feel their feelings. Like I've seen men who, they have a full-time job, they do all these things, then they still go and work on their car. And then they go do other things instead of like you were saying, you're sitting with it, like actually sitting with it and feeling it. And I found that it's so powerful for us to do that work. It's so brave for us to do that work. I know that one of the quotes that really stuck with me, that really empowered me to sit with it, it was a quote from Kendrick Lamar's album. It came out like 2, 3 years ago, but in one of his songs, he said, "You've never felt grief till you've felt it sober." And I just kept coming back to that. I just kept coming back to that because I realized how I was honestly, a lot of friends and even family were like, "Oh, let's just go have a drink. Let's just go do this." And I remember just that phrase. It's like, "No, no, you want to feel this over. You want to feel it fully. Like you don't want to dim this down. You don't want to suppress it because it's gonna come out eventually. And might as well do it when you're in a season of grieving. In Dominicans, we have the what we call los 9 días, like the 9 days, which I think is beautiful. We allow 9 days of grieving where we don't work, we don't do anything. We just every day we take time to talk about this person, sit with each other, cry. Home typically just get a bunch of chairs, everyone gets coffee, and everyone just comes and just for 9 days we just do that grieving. And I all my childhood friends, my high school friends were here. They're like, "Oh, let's go to this club, let's go do that," and I could have easily done it. And I chose not to because I thought of that phrase, of that quote, and I thought how important it was for me to, feel that grief sober. Because if I wanted to heal it, that's how the best way to do it. Like I don't drink when I'm sad. I drink for celebration only, and I think that's a big distinction because you can. It's a very slippery slope. It's a very very slippery slope. And hey, I have my rum here. Because I think, alcohol can be an amazing thing, but it's also important of how we're using it and the intention we have behind it. So just wanted to share that with you guys because it's something that really helped me. But I see each other's hands up. Go ahead, my brother. Go ahead.
Hey guys, can you hear me all right?
We do, yeah.
Cool, cool. Yeah, man, there's so many points to touch on. But yeah, anybody who knows me knows, there's a lot of there's a lot of trauma, in my past. There's a lot of things that um, just what I dealt with. There was a lot of things I couldn't face head on. I didn't have that. Um, I didn't have a dad that was like emotionally intelligent whatsoever. He was the kind of guy that like if somebody cut in front of him at the grocery store, it was like, okay, now it's fist fight time. Um, and I just kind of grew up with that and dealing with a lot of things growing up. Um, yeah, and not being able to kind of tackle those things at that time and kind of face it head on, it just builds this really like it's like the bedrock of like trauma and like um what can you say like behavioral um what is the word I'm looking for, just things that you maladaption, I guess you could say, where you kind of get stuck in these patterns. So I mean, thankfully I never like drank, I never really smoked. And when I did start doing that, I kind of nipped it in the bud. It wasn't really for me, and I kind of caught myself going down that way. But at the same rate, um, I like developed these coping mechanisms that were like very numbing. And it's just kind of like I can't go into that because those waters are too deep. It's like I'm not in a position to do that right now, and yeah, it's I think that we have that like culturally. I think some of it is like systematic, and like possibly like engineered, where it's like a lot of stuff like with COVID, it's like a lot of the stuff like that went down, like it did not have to go down that way. Like there's a lot of fear and trauma that was imposed on the people. And yeah, just psychically damaged people, man. And it's hard to come out. It's hard to come out of it. And I think it shows up in so many different ways. Post traumatic stress, um, just attitude issues, personality problems. Um, yeah, and I think when we see those people, and like when I see anybody really like say somebody working like a rough job or somebody on the street, it's like, dude, I know there's like an ocean of trauma underneath that person. It's like that person didn't just end up there, you know, like that person has like probably is one of the smarter people that I'll come across today. They just didn't have the same upbringing. They were psychically damaged. They weren't able to face. They didn't have the tools to come across those things. So, I try to have a lot of compassion for people, and I could, sympathize with a lot of people that go through a lot of problems, and because we all got to go through it in one way or another, and sometimes it stacks, man, and I think it does stack a lot when we don't have those tools and we don't have those mentors that kind of guide us through and help us through the hard times. Because just like Alex said, if you're not hitting it head on, hey, now you're swimming, you know, and then the original, now you lost your boat, you know, and now you're really screwed. Now you're up Ship's Creek without a freaking paddle. And it's like, okay, now my original problem was bad. Now it's even worse. So,
Brother, that's powerful. Let's go ahead, brother. I see your hand is up.
So I do want to acknowledge, Sean, like when we're kids or if we're naive, if we get hit with something that we're not familiar with and we don't have the skills to deal with it, um, there's a fawning or a freezing effect, which I totally acknowledge. And what I've noticed is in my personal life, especially as of recent, as I've gotten more mature, no one call me out here, okay? All jokes aside, um, but like I noticed that there's a lot of the times, especially in like a given situation where grief is present or it's a hard and heavy situation, I noticed that as I've gotten older, I actually I appreciate not knowing what to do at first. And the saying that I got, and one of my students shared this with me recently, what they said is, I'm really confused, but I'm clear that I'm confused. So they have clarity around being confused. And sometimes I find with these really heavy situations where there's a lot of emotions, a lot of thoughts, a lot of actions, maybe some things that didn't happen, it's actually a perfect time to ask yourself questions, or if you have the privilege of being around somebody who's going through it with you or seeing what you're going through, to be able to ask those questions and be okay with being confused and not being clear and not having the tools. Um, I do find that breakdowns are a perfect opportunity for breakthroughs. And it's important during those breakthroughs, in my experience, that I actually don't know what the outcome is. I have no idea. And I don't know how I'm going to act, and I don't know what I'm going to do. And I'm okay with that. And I've noticed that, especially as I've gotten older, if we're kids, like it's a different story. I get that. And even as adults too. But for me personally, I really want to lean into those spaces, so I can really discover something. And I always keep in the back of my mind, if I can do something like this, who can learn from it, and who can I inspire to maybe do something similar in their own life to whatever capacity or whatever they're dealing with. Um, so that gives me a lot of hope, especially when I'm confused, because man, when we're in these funerals, these situations that are really wild, it is hard to know what to do, especially if you don't have any experience in it. Um, beginner's mindset, beginner's mindset.
Oh, so we cooking. I see. This is awesome. This is awesome. I just want to touch on something that Sean shared, and I'll let you, Aaron, right away. So first of all, brother, thank you. I love how you always show up and you're real. Like the world needs more real and raw. Let's be honest. And and sometimes we we forget how much easier it is to just numb yourself. It's just easier. It really is. Like behaviorally, it's easier to just do that. And men are tend to celebrate like, oh, I do hard things. But when it comes to doing this kind of hard things, that shadow work, those emotions, we kind of push it off and do other things that might not really support us. And I think it's so important to first of all acknowledge, like you're doing, Sean, like just being aware of what we're doing so that we can take a different decision. So that sometimes we make the hard choice of let me not numb it this time. Not every time, but just this time. Like I just sit with it for a little bit longer, maybe two more minutes. And it's in today's day and age, it's just becoming easier and easier for us to know ourselves. And ultimately, I think it's going to become easier. Like it's going to be easier for you to just get VR and like a sex doll and just be in a couch and the freaking tube that you throw and not really feel anything. Full Matrix mode. It's going to become easier. So the more that we acknowledge that and honestly, it's what it said, accept that, the easier it is for us to understand. Like, hey, sometimes I got to do this hard work. Like I gotta do this hard work. And as men also we tend to like have a hard time doing it for ourselves. But let me do this for my family. Let me do this for the people that depend on me. Because ultimately, like, yeah, it allows me to show up better for them. It allows me to show up better for the people that I work with and the people that that depend on me. So I just wanted to touch on that because it is easier to just know yourself. It's a lot easier. But it's also something that you're gonna pay sometimes multiplied later on. So I just wanted to share that. And yeah, always keeping that learner's mentality as valid. So go ahead, Aaron.
Beautifully articulated, my brother. And what really, comes up for me is how important that is to make that a habit because it's something that you said. I mean, like the consequences of not of avoiding our shadow work is immense. It's like discipline weighs ounces, you regret weighs tons. So um let me know if this is like a little off script, but I actually came prepared to this call um, with a question. So some kind of background is that just a few days ago, my mom actually texted me. She sent me a voice message, just like at really becoming aware and acknowledging that my grandpa is having a really tough time accepting the fact he's going to die. And like so they were in like a phone call with um or with a doctor and whatnot. And they were asking him, okay, like what would happen, if you get into a heart attack or like you stop breathing or whatever. And he just kind of said like, oh well, jokes and like, oh, that would never happen to me or whatever. And just other things like he hasn't set up, funeral arrangements or anything of that nature. Like he really just is very obviously very thinking about death is very painful for him. And so the question I really have for the men who spoke on the call that talked about their father's passing, namely Carlos and Luke, I would just love to get a little bit of your perspective on how I can support my mom the beauty when my grandpa passes. Um, Fortunately, she's got a sister, so it's not like I'm gonna be having to probably like get things arranged or anything of those nature. But other than kind of like just holding space for them and really making sure I'm there. Yeah, do you guys have anything that you guys could like help me to anticipate better?
I mean, I'll speak from my personal experience with my mom. When we lost my dad, one of the things that I realized as men, it's important for us to be strong, right? Like for the people that we care about. And the only way that we can be strong for those people is to do what Drew and Alex and everyone in this call is sharing. We have to sit with our feelings and make sure that we're good. Like we have to sit like because when your grandfather passes away, I know you're caring for him now. It's gonna be hard on you, and it's gonna be easy for you to try and distract yourself or confuse yourself, thinking that let me go do this work, no, let me go do this thing instead of like, are you actually sitting with yourself and grieving? Like, are you just allowing yourself to feel the feelings that come with losing someone you care about? Because that's gonna give you that strength. That's gonna give you that foundation, so that when your mom decides to lean on you and cry and needs a strong man for her, like you can only do that when you are good, when you are strong. And you cannot gain that strength otherwise. Like that strength only comes from you allowing yourself to feel your feelings. You see how you're an empath and you're immediately thinking of your mom? Amazing. Amazing. That's just a lot about your character. But from my perspective, like when my mom came to Jersey and we had to do the whole funeral, I had to be strong for her. And I was only strong for her honestly, because I gave myself time to grieve, in between. Like I gave myself that time so that she could feel her feelings, so that she could, she also had to do eulogy, right? So it was heavy
Mhm.
on her too. So
Yes.
that would be my advice. Like, make sure that you're good and make sure you don't breathe through your own feelings. Because it's easy for us to just be like, no, I'm good. Like, yeah, I love my grandpa, but he's fine. But like, did you sit with yourself and ask, like, hey, like, how do I feel about this? Like, how am I navigating this? Because that's really going to allow you to feel that strength. And personally, I'll share one of the things that allowed me to have strength is God. Like, I remember people always asking me, like, or saying to me, "Hey, I hope God gives you strength and peace." And that really stuck with me because I tried to be strong like for myself, but that when it gets to that level, there's no internal strength that you can gather that's gonna help you to carry your mom when she's dealing with that grief. You have to tap into something higher and bigger than you. And for me, that's what I did. Like I took that time to feel my feelings, and then I just asked God, "Hey, give me the strength to navigate this season. Give me the strength to support my people." So that's what I would share, brother. And fear is one of the last fears we and the strongest fears we experience. And I'm not surprised that your grandpa's having a tough time because it's really scary. But once we really, accept it and embrace death. I know it sounds weird to say, but once we embrace that as just part of life and it's a beautiful part of life, it's what makes life beautiful. The fact that it's a limited amount of time that we have on this planet, and also we don't even know if we have tomorrow. It allows us to be more grateful and gives us more strength that we can then share with the people that we care about most. Does that make sense? Is that helpful?
Yeah, that's real. I really want to put what's coming up for me, where I've had this experience where I just get drained throughout the day, throughout the week, and I don't really notice, and then I try to just do my thing, and I don't really show up in the way that I really want for my people, and I'll notice myself just kind of like autopiloting. And I'm like understanding why my dad didn't have the emotional intelligence, going back to kind of what Sean said of what I, you know, my standard was or I expected, because it's really challenging as a parent. Like from what I can only imagine, just caretaking for my grandparents, where sometimes I'm just like not fully present, and I'm like autopilot, and I'm wondering like, oh, and I'm going back and thinking about what when my caretakers I would have preferred, and they just weren't there in that way. So it's kind of like a mental preparation for me in realizing how important it's gonna be when that happens, that I'm really intentional with my energy, like, and really intentional with tapping in with God, and not just being like, oh, I'm good, and then showing up, and then something happens where my mom opens up and I'm not really there, present to really feel her, allow her to feel her feelings. So that's majorly helpful.
Shout out to you,
So
brother,
thank
for
you.
being proactive. Shout out to you for being proactive.
Thank
I
you,
wish I
King.
was that proactive. That's amazing. Go ahead, Tom Brown. I see your hands been up, brother. Go ahead.
Hi everyone. Um, well, grief for me it's a very interesting topic. Obviously, as I consider everybody has have lost dear people to me, family members. You can grieve even, relationship. There's a lot to grieve. Youth, your time, this, and for dealing with grief in general. First, I mean, I'm very conscious of my own death, and I've been, conscious of that since very little. That was something that intrigued me a lot. My grandmother, she used to be, we call it Hora Santa lady. That is the lady that go to do the prayers whenever somebody dies in the town. So, by the age of 5, 7, I've been in like, let's say, 100 funerals. So that relationship with death, and that questioning of death was very, premature for me. So I was like curious, like everybody will go see the body, say something, then step out. And we have in Dominican Republic like the 9 days to grieve that and to try to help the soul to get to heaven. So it's like a community thing where it's everybody's this grief is it's a community. It's not just family, it's family, friends, neighbors, and there's layers of people that might be there just because they're supporting the family members. They might not ever have interacted with the person that passed away. So when I was curious about all of that back then, I was like, well, a lot of people staying around, they're praying to this God. Maybe that God actually doesn't exist, and that was my first pragmatical conclusion back then. And after time passed, it's like, wow, how can I cope with my own death? Very, like I would say, 8 years old, 10 years old. I need to cope with mine and with my own fears. So okay, I'm scared of the darkness. Imagine scared of death. At 9 years old. So I start finding mechanisms to fight these fears. Okay, I'm scared of darkness, so I will go to a dark place in our house and be like, okay, so let's face it. So you can create your own mechanisms to cope with fear, and after you cope with your own fear, with your own death, and you're like, okay, what will happen if I die today or if I die tomorrow? Am I living the way that I wanted to live? The same apply for family members. Your dad, your mom, they live the life that they decide to, maybe not to the best of you think of their capability, but what about if they have the same principle of you? Something that I love about Kant is when you make your truth universal, you see how good it is. If everybody is as conscious of their own death as I am, will be a better society. Won't be a better society. So, what will happen with my family members when that happens, and how I cope with that, and understanding that people might expect you to show up and be there and be supportive, and other people, they just want a space and time. And for me, it's difficult because even though I know that some people want me to be there and be supportive, whenever that happens to me, I'm like, I just want to be honoring this person with the less amount of distraction as possible. Because there's nothing that you can say. There's nothing that nobody can say, because because in my own experience, I've seen it so much that I'm part of that community that have grieved hundreds of people's already. So it's like that grief is already there as a baseline. So whenever that happens to me, it's more like, okay, I need time to do this mental summary of this person's life, and what can I take from this, and could be learnings, could be like, okay, so this is my summary, my, let's say, soul proof of my dear one. And whenever I want to honor them, and I feel like, wow, my dog passed away, my granny passed away. Okay, so what we're gonna do with that? We're working, we're performing, we're helping people. You're supposed to, as head of the family, to be there and show up for everybody. You you schedule grief and you schedule the melancholy, but you make sure to schedule it. You make sure to schedule the day after the 9 days that you set everybody up, and all the grief for the family and the community. And whenever everybody's home, then you're like, okay, so let's fucking cry. So, and then you let it go, but you have to allow yourself to, even though you're performing and showing up for your people, just purely just vent, and just be like, hey, today I will allow myself to be sad, and I will set the move, and I will put the music, and I will try to connect, and I will put soul music, and the food will be about that, and it's intentional, not because I want to get rid of it, but because could be a breakthrough of their own grief, or could be a way to honor this person and keep them fresh in your mind. Because that's the thing, like, you don't want remember it dear one, and whenever you see them through like medical decade, you also want to keep up the other memories, because sometimes you get so, especially if they are in a medical condition, that you have to help them through that. Wow, you want to remember the powerful, strong man that carry your dad when he was healthy. Maybe you don't want to remember when he was, in bed, and or you can also use that as like, okay, I seen you through your life. I was lucky enough to saw you strong, and lucky enough to take care of you. So if sometimes we struggle to see beauty into natural process, and see beauty, or let's say purpose, in grief and pain. So when you assign that purpose to that grief and that pain, and you want to do something with that, either the honor them just by remembering, or honor them with actions afterwards, depending what was, the scenery. Uh, this is this is something very personal. My grandfather, he killed himself before I was born, and that changed my dad's life completely, and he went to a very, you know loop of his own life. Oh, my dad, I need to. And then he was always like trying to justify suicide whenever you get older, like euthanasia. I understand that there's a lot of topics that can be addressed over there, but it's like, okay, so what's the deal when you, as a, let's say, traditional male, you don't want to be taken care of? And I'm not sure, I'm talking about 10 years old, always tell my dad, I know that you think that way, that you don't want anybody to take care of you, but I want the opposite. Whenever I have kids, they have to take care of me until I'm 120 years old. So just try to get the idea in his brain that, like, for me, at least for me, it's not a shame to be taken care of, because you did for me. So the less I can do is show up and do the same for you. And it's not struggle, it's not hard, it's something that I want to do, and I'm grateful if I had the capacity at the time, and the resources to take care of you. So and for me, that's supporting grief. It's like, okay, let's see that grief that he had. How can I put some sparkles of honor and being all honor in being taken care of, and let the family that you support take care of you whenever you get in an older, you know, to an older age. And that's my take in grief, especially the death part of it.
Jesus Christ, I'm glad I don't have to follow that. Alex, go ahead. That's on you, bro.
I'll follow it. And I originally raised my hand because I wanted to give you some advice, Aaron. But before we get into that, I wanted to touch on what Zambrano said. First of all, bro, thank you for holding space for those hundreds of people. I'm actually in that camp too. Death has always been something that's been pretty close to me. I think because of my family dynamics, being adopted, my parents are older, so my grandparents were older, and also friends. It's always been around me. And it's really interesting because I always have had a fascination with it too. Um, because I wanted to understand it a little bit more. And I think part of me knows that, none of us get off this rock alive. So I find that looking at our death and it's one of the most powerful things we can do because I find that so many people are so scared of death that they forget to live. And when I really acknowledge my own death, I try to walk in a way where it's like, if this is the last conversation I'm going to have with this person, how can I make the most of this? And I do a lot of the times. That's why I share in the ways that I do, is because I don't want to die with any of my music inside of me, and I want to make an impact on people in a positive way. And because I don't, and this is like a hypothesis and kind of like an observation I've made, especially working with a lot of people who are in pain. I don't think we really solve our pains and problems. I think that we can outgrow them and they don't touch us as deeply and they don't impact us as negatively. I don't find that we really solve problems. I think we outgrow them. And I like that because it helps me come to terms with my perfectionism. I can't solve everything. And it also reminds me that I actually have a choice to outgrow these things, however painful they might be. So that's why I have my rituals. I think rituals help close loops, and they also remind me that I can actually take action day to day. And that really helps me. And it helps me show up for others, which gets me into my point. What I wanted to share with you, Aaron, is right now, I know that there's a lot of struggle in your family with your grandpa, and I just can't help but think that this is such a huge opportunity for you and your family. Knowing you and like what you've been going through for the past few years, stepping into your leadership, by the way, you've been doing great. Um, we can learn all the things about business, we can do all these things, and there's nothing that strengthens us more than being there for family. That is a real true test. So I just want to share with you that you do have a huge opportunity here right now. So thanks for showing up and sharing it. And my best advice to you too is when you're in those environments, listen, and don't be afraid to ask questions so you can get really clear. And because what's going to happen in these situations is your male instinct is going to turn on. You want to provide and protect. You want to provide and protect, especially your mom. So my best advice is to listen. Listen to the environment. You do a good job of that. And what you can do is you can start anticipating the needs of the people around you. And that's where they don't have to ask. And then you can really show up for them from a heart-based perspective. Don't forget to give yourself space. And the good time to do that, where I personally do it, is at the end of the day and the beginning and the end of the day, where I sit with myself. Even sometimes it's a few minutes, sometimes it's an hour. That's a great way to really feel things and really, as Drew was saying, kind of sit with it and look at it head on. Um, and I think that this is kind of like the heart and soul of what it means to be a man, is to show up in these situations as best as we can. And when we're in these types of situations, I find I can't help but think that it really helps remind me that there's something bigger than me, whether you want to call it God, creator of the universe, society, like all these things. And that really humbles me. And I want to be a positive impact on that as best as I can. And showing up for family, especially in these moments, is this is it's like a once in a lifetime. It's a once in a lifetime. So I hope that lands for you, brother. And if you need any support or assistance, you can always reach out to me as well.
Yes, it definitely did. Thank you very much.
That's awesome. Look, go ahead, bro. Let's see your hand is up.
Um, so I've got several thoughts. One of the things, it's interesting. I don't do it as much anymore, but I used to journal, and I'll journal in this app called Day One. It's on like most devices like iPhone, iPad, and I think there's one on Android too. But so from 10 years ago today, it's about post-traumatic growth. And I just find that, I don't know, kismet or whatever. It's the idea where, you have a stressful situation or trauma, and not that I want to call death trauma, but it's a stressful situation when you're dealing with someone that's passing. and allowing that to make space for and for you to grow through it as opposed to be overcome by it. Um, and one of the other things I wanted to say, Aaron, is, and Alex, you might appreciate this. This is from both Alex and my mentor, Gary Gray and Doug Gray of the Gray Institute. The truest form of selflessness is to be selfish first so that you can do good things for others. So, kind of what Carlos was saying, make sure you are honest with your feelings and vulnerable enough and take the time to feel out, and seek out what you need so that you can be there for your mom. I'm also going to touch on something which is kind of in a different, let's just say in a different category when we deal with grief. I worked as a financial advisor for a number of years, and I can tell you the amount of people that have no idea what to do with their family members' assets or how to even get into accounts or what the account numbers are or any of that stuff. Everything's online now and nothing's organized. It can take months to years to figure out what stuff is what to do. That will be a massive help to your mom if that's not already in place because it's a nightmare. I've heard so many horror stories. Um, yeah,
Like,
Thank you for that, Luke.
that's beautiful. That's so true. Yeah, my dad did not have a afterlife plan, and it was rough. Like lawyers in multiple countries, all that. It was really intense. It's really really good advice. And as I noticed, we're past our time. There's many things Savannah shared that I have to hold on to. I'm like, I can't just staying with Alan, Sean, Luke, you guys are all share some, and Sean, you guys share so many amazing things. But I do want to honor you guys' time. Supposed to be just an hour. We are here every week, same time, same place, and I'm really grateful for all you guys to be on. Next week, we're going to be talking about legacy. So it should be a bit of a lighter call. This one's heavy, but we have to go into those depths so that we can have that strength, so that we can talk about the future, that we can talk about bigger, more brighter things. So I would love to have you all again next week, same time, same place, same Zoom link and everything. And we're going to be talking about legacy. We're going to be talking about how the legacy that we wouldn't leave as man. Because I think that's one of the most powerful things that we got to keep in the front of our minds as productive members of society and as good men, which are sometimes hard to find. So I appreciate you guys, and I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your Friday Eve. I'm gonna finish my little rum here and head to bed. But I appreciate you guys, and anything else you guys want to share before we jump off? I want to make sure I give the floor to you guys before we close out the call.
Thanks for showing up and showing out today, everybody.
Appreciate you. Take care, guys.
Bye.